Okay, so this video is going to be about the average rate of change. And the average rate of change is very, very similar between the slope. So we're actually going to find the slope between 2 points. So it's going to be like graphing 2 points on a general graph that's not a straight line and saying, okay, well, what's the slope between those 2 points? And that's going to be kind of what we're looking for. So this line that I drew is called the secant line. This is the line that's going to help me find the slope or the average rate of change for this interval. Now, right now I'm just going to talk about a generic interval. So my interval is just going to be from A to B. And the formula that I'm going to use to find the slope of the secant line through this interval, so the slope of the secant line through my interval is going to be f of b, which is the second part of my interval, minus f of a over b minus a. So you're going to want to keep that formula handy. So I'm going to use this graph here for my next two problems. So my first problem says that I want to find the average rate of change between the interval -2, 1. So I'm going to find out where these 2 points are on the graph. So -2 for my x value is going to be right here on the graph, and +1 is going to be right here. So this is going to be my secant line between those 2 points. That's a pretty ugly line. Let's try that again. So this is going to be my secant line through those 2 points. Not much better than the first one. Y'all didn't see it though. That's okay. All right, so I want to know what f of -2 is and what f of 1 is. Now what we have to understand is because -2 is in the first spot, that's really my f of a. Because 1 is in my second spot, that's going to be my f of b. So what is the point? For -2, I'm at the point 1, and at 1, my y value is 8. So this is the point 1, -8, I'm sorry, 1, -8, and this is the point -2, 1. And that's kind of the parts that we're going to use. So my formula says f of b, well, f of b is -8 minus f of a, which is 1, over b minus a, so over 1 minus a -2. Understand, this negative comes from the formula. This negative comes from the fact that this is a -2. Remember, two negatives make a positive. So I have -8 minus a -1. That gives me a -9. 1 plus 2 is 3. So the slope between these 2 points is -3. I'm going to use the same graph for the next problem. The next interval is going to go from the point 0, 4. So at 0, my graph is at this point. That's 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So it's 0, -7. And 4, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 4, 1. So this is my secant line for this one. So I'm going from 0 to 4, and I want to find the average rate of change between those 2 points. Remember, this is my A, this is my B. So f of A is going to be -7, and f of B is going to be 1. So when I plug this into my equation, I'm going to do f of b minus f of a. So 1 minus a -7 over 4 minus 0. Two negatives make a positive, and I get 8 over 4, which is a +2. Okay, so that's how we use the formula to do this. The formula f of b minus f of a over b minus a. Now I'm going to see if I can make this a little bit easier for you. Okay, Now, when we talk about rate of change is basically talking about the slope. And if you remember the slope is y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. And I hope you remember that because that should be pretty basic about a slope. Now, when it comes to the rate of change, it's never talking about an actual line. It's normally talking about an irregular shaped figure, kind of like this parabola here, because this parabola is definitely a U. It's always going to be talking about an interval. Now, this interval is not an x and a y value. These are two x values. So it's talking about the interval from -2 to 1. So I'm going to write 2 points. One that starts at -2 and one that starts at 1, and I need to find the y values for each of those. So -2, 1 is right here, and 1, -8. And then I can simply plug these values in to the slope formula that I already know. So I don't actually have to memorize a new formula with f of a and f of b. I just have to understand that this is an x value and this is an x value, and I need to find the corresponding y values. And then I can plug these in, and I can say this is x1 and this is y1 and this is x2 and this is y2, and I can say y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1 and say -9, two negatives make a positive, over 3, and I still get -3, which is the same thing I got the first time using this new formula. I can do the same thing with the other problem, which was 0, 4 as my interval, and say I'm going to write 2 problems, or 2 points, one point where 0 is an x, and then the other point where 4 is an x, and say, okay, when 0 is my x, my y is right here, which is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, which is -7, and when 4 is my x, my y is +1, and now I have 2 points, and again, I can use the exact same formula that I'm used to, the exact same formula that I've already memorized, so I don't have to memorize a new one, and I can say this is x1, this is y1, this is x2, this is y2, and I can put this back into my slope formula and say 1 minus a -7 over 4 minus 0. 2 negatives still make a positive. 1 plus 7 is 8 divided by 4. 8 divided by 4 is 2. And I get the exact same answer in both cases. So I did not get anything different. I used a formula that I already had instead of memorizing a new formula. Again, the only new information is that this is not an XY coordinate. Both of these are X values. I just had to find their corresponding Ys. So whichever method you find easiest, by all means, use that method. I'm going to do one more example of this, and then I think I'm going to call it good as far as the rate of change goes. Okay, so this one doesn't give me a graph, it gives me a formula, or it gives me an equation. But it still gives me the interval at which I'm looking for my rate of change. But again, these are the X values and I need to find the Y. So that means I have 2 points, one where -1 is my X and one where 2 is my X. And I need to find the corresponding Y values. How do I find the Y values? I plug in those X coordinates. So -1 squared plus 6 times -1 minus 14. And then I'm going to simplify. So -1 squared is 1, minus 6 minus 14. So -1 minus 20, so -21. So this is -21. And then for my next one, I'm going to plug in 2. So -2 squared plus 6 times 2 minus 14. So -4 plus 12 minus 14. -4 plus 12 minus 14 is -6. So my second Y value is -6. Then I'm going to use my slope formula. This is x1, y1. This is x2, y2. So -6 minus a -21 over 2 minus a -1. 2 negatives make a positive. So I get 15 over 2 negatives make a positive 3, which is 5. So the slope between this range is 5. This one has a fraction in it, so I figured I'd do this one too, because I know how much you guys love fractions. So if I have x minus 4 over x, and I'm still doing the same thing. I'm still finding the coordinates. 2 is one of my x, 8 is my other x, and I'm finding the y. So I'm simply going to plug it in. And I'm going to start with the 2 because it came first. So 2 minus 4 over 2. Well, 2 minus 4 is negative 2 over 2, so this particular y is 1. Plug in my other one, and I'm going to say 8 minus 4 over 8. 8 minus 4 is 4 over 8, which is 1/2. So this y is 1/2. I'm going to do my slope formula, x1, y1, x2, y2. So 1/2, so y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. Now, you can change 1/2 to a decimal if it makes you feel better. That is not a problem. But I made a mistake, so let me go back and fix my mistake. This is not 1, that is a negative 1. So that means that has to be minus a negative 1. So now you can change 1/2 to a decimal. 2 negatives make a positive. So 1/2 plus 1 is 1.5. 8 minus 2 is 6. So 1.5 divided by 6, if you put that in a calculator, you would get 0.25, which of course is the fraction 1/4. If you can change your fraction to a decimal to an easy fraction, please do so. If for whatever reason you have a square root in your rate of change and your rate of change gives you a decimal that you cannot change to a fraction, then just leave it as a decimal. It's a rate of change, so it's a little bit different than a slope, and slopes we normally leave as decimals.